Good afternoon, everybody. Anthony Aniano here from RotoBaller Radio and RotoBaller.com with your Week 8 sleeper and value plays for the 2023 fantasy football season. Folks, don't forget, head over to RotoBaller.com right now. Sign up for any of the premium passes. Use the promotional code ACES to save at checkout, whether it's the remainder of your fantasy football season, fantasy basketball, NHL, or any other sport that you're interested in, season long or DFS. RotoBaller.com, the place to be. And like we said, ACES, the promo code ACES, saves you money at checkout. Like and subscribe right here to the RotoBaller YouTube channel and download the RotoBaller app. It's free. 6 great sports, all right there on your phone. Season long or DFS, whatever you're looking for, all available on the RotoBaller app. All right, everybody. So it's week 8 of your fantasy football season. No bye weeks this week, so that's a nice feature. We start with a Thursday night game, which will not be included in this, as you know, this recording is happening Thursday, but published on Saturday. So we'll take a look at the Sunday matchups, Sunday night, Monday, and look for some sleepers, some value plays, some inexpensive starts on DraftKings that can help you for this week. And we'll start at the quarterback position. C.J. Stroud of the Houston Texans, 6,300 on DraftKings, so a little pricier than what we normally have. But for season-long formats, he is a viable start. With quarterbacks like Brock Purdy out, Justin Fields out, other quarterbacks a little less effective, Ryan Tannehill out, not that you would be playing him, but nonetheless, if you're worried about playing C.J. Stroud, I wouldn't be. He'd be in my lineup this week. If he's your best option, I'm comfortable with that. 6,300, like I mentioned on DraftKings, 18.7 fantasy points going against the Carolina Panthers, the worst team in the league. They are middle of the road against defending QBs. They're at 15th overall, allowing 214 passing yards per game. They're significantly worse against the run, but the numbers don't scare me. I expect C.J. Stroud. Tank Dell is back. Nico Collins is there. Allowing 18.1 points per game on the season against opposing QBs. But here's the number that stands out. 10 passing touchdowns already allowed this season by the Carolina Panther defense. This Houston offense is young, improving. C.J. Stroud, arguably, I don't even know if arguably, has been the best rookie quarterback in the draft, and he'll be in lineups of mine this week for Week 8. At the running back position, my number one sleeper and value play of the week, regardless of position, is Gus Edwards of the Baltimore Ravens. 5,500 on DraftKings. He makes a terrific flex play in your season-long format, low-end running back 2. But a great matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. On DraftKings, he's marked at $5,500, averaging 8.8 fantasy points per game, coming off his best game of the season last week, where he scored 21.4 fantasy points. Now, that Arizona defense is terrible. Let's just acknowledge it. 29th in the league against opposing running backs, allowing 26.4 PPR points per game to the running back position, with a total of 9 touchdowns. 2 running backs, 5 on the ground and 4 through the air. They are allowing 130.7 rushing yards per game. Gus Edwards as a flex, as a lower cost DFS option, is a terrific play this week. 2 other running backs, and I don't know if we're going to use them in season long, unless riddled by injury, but maybe as a DFS low-cost flyer, okay, and thus the name sleeper and value play. But Cam Akers of the Minnesota Vikings against the Green Bay Packers. You saw him get an increased role last week, 10 carries. He had 2 catches on 3 targets. He's priced at $4,800 on DraftKings. He's averaging 6.1 points on the season between Minnesota and his time with the Rams. Now, why Cam Akers? Well, I love the matchup against that Green Bay Packer run defense. That's currently 31st in the league against opposing running backs, allowing just under 27 fantasy points per game to the running back position, with 5 total touchdowns to the running back position. Green Bay is allowing 143.7 rushing yards per game. 143.7 rushing yards per game. Madison has been okay. Cam Akers has actually looked a little bit better. And maybe, just maybe, we see more Cam Akers than Alexander Madison starting this week in a prime matchup against that Packers run defense. Also, a backup running back who I think is starting to crack that top line. That's Devin Singletary of the Houston Texans. 2 weeks ago, Devin Singletary outplayed Dameon Pierce. Okay, 12 carries, 58 yards in Week 6. Then they were on the bye Week 7. were the Houston Texans. Devin Singletary against the Carolina Panthers is 4,400. He's averaging just under 5 points per game, but I'm not worried about that because he hasn't been used much. I do expect that usage to continue to uptick as Dameon Pierce continues to be completely unproductive. Devin Singletary goes against the Carolina Panther defense that is 31st in the league against opposing running backs. 33.6 fantasy points per game allowed to opposing running backs with a total of 13 touchdowns. Okay, they just haven't been able to stop any running backs. 11 rushing touchdowns allowed on the ground, 2 running back touchdowns through the air for that total of 13 touchdowns. Carolina is allowing 144.3 rushing yards per game. Rushing yards per game, they're equal to the Green Bay Packers. They have allowed a significant amount more touchdowns to the position. So Devin Singletary at 4,400 provides some nice value, maybe a little sleeper for you for week 8 of your fantasy football season. At the wide receiver position, Romeo Doubs of the Green Bay Packers, let's just acknowledge this, is Jordan Love's wide receiver of choice. When he goes against a Minnesota Viking defense that's 28th in the league against opposing wide receivers, allowing 245.4 passing yards per game. Minnesota defense is allowing 40.1 PPR points per game to opposing wide receivers, with 6 touchdowns to the wide receiver position of the 9 passing touchdowns Minnesota has allowed. Now, Romeo Doubs is under 5,000 on DraftKings. He's priced at 4,900 with 12.1 points per game on average has Romeo Doubs scored. He's got 34 targets in his last 4 matchups. Also, I think still underpriced is Rashee Rice of the Kansas City Chiefs going against the turnstile known as the Denver Bronco defense. He's priced at 5,000 this week on DraftKings, yet averaging 10.6 points per game in that format. He's got a touchdown in 2 of his last 3 games, does Rashee Rice, and 10 or more fantasy points in 4 of his last 5. Now, the Denver defense, 26th in the league against opposing wide receivers, allowing 272.7 passing yards per game. They're allowing 34.8 PPR points per game to opposing wide receivers, with 9 wide receiver touchdowns of their astounding 16 passing touchdowns allowed this season. This is obviously an all-in situation. Mahomes, Kelsey, Pacheco all play against Denver. I'm also getting Rashee Rice in any lineup I can. And finally, at the tight end position, Monday night matchup, Michael Mayer of the Las Vegas Raiders against the Detroit Lions. Detroit 30th in the league against opposing tight ends, allowing 15.8 PPR points per game to the tight end position, with 4 touchdowns to tight ends of the 11 passing touchdowns they've allowed. Detroit allows just under 260 passing yards a game. Michael Mayer is dirt cheap at 2,900 on DraftKings, only averaging 3.6 points per game. 2 weeks ago, he had a nice matchup. Last week, he kind of flamed out. But nonetheless, I will take advantage of how poorly Detroit defends the tight end position, allowing almost 16 points per game in a PPR format. So to recap, my sleeper and value plays for Week 8 of the fantasy football season: quarterback, C.J. Stroud; at running back, Gus Edwards, my priority play of the week, along with Cam Akers and Devin Singletary; at the wide receiver position, Romeo Doubs and Rashee Rice; and my tight end for the week, Michael Mayer of the Las Vegas Raiders. All right, everybody, as always, thanks for watching. Give me a follow on Twitter at Aniano Fantasy, and we'll see you next time right here on RotoBaller Radio.